All right. Today is Tuesday, November 19th, and this is a regular meeting of the Town of Estes Park Planning Commission. I'd like to just have brief introductions for everybody in the audience. I am Commissioner Cooper.
Commissioner Paulson.
Commissioner Mulhern.
Commissioner Robbins.
And if you could introduce yourself on the far side of the dais.
Dan Kramer, Town Attorney.
Steve Correcchia, Community Development Director.
Kara Washam, Planner 2.
Thank you, appreciate it. First on our agenda would be approval of the agenda. And first of all, I would like to ask if we have any changes or additions to the agenda. I do have two things. When we get, before we do the rezoning and the action items, I do have a couple of requests for clarifications that I'll just ask for that prior to that. And at the end of the agenda, I believe under future projects, we'll consult with trustee about our joint working meeting next month and just have some comments about that. Hearing no other additions to the agenda, entertain a motion in a second.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, any other changes, additions? Hearing none, all in favor? Okay, so our agenda has been approved. On our consent agenda, we have our Planning Commission minutes dated January 21st, 2025. Do we have any additions or changes to those from any of the commission members? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay. Oops, one more. All right. Consent agenda has been approved. Next order of business is public comment. We did receive one public comment that Planner Warsham will address during your presentation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you. Action items. Before we get started, I did have one clarification. The area that's being considered for change in rezoning is surrounded by Larimer County unincorporated space, I believe it's called. Is this was this property annexed at one point in time? Is it part of the city of Estes Park, or why are we dealing with this instead of the Estes Valley Planning Commission? Just curious.
Chair Cooper, I'm just wondering why you want to bring this up before we get into the agenda item, because it sounds like it's on topic for the agenda item and could be on the record there.
Very good. I'll bring it up later. Okay. Planner Washam. I will just make one public comment that Nathan Kinley built my house 8 years ago, but I have no personal or business relationship with him at this point in time. So if anybody feels I should recuse myself, please feel free to make a comment on that. So, okay, Kara.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Kara Washam, Planner 2. I have two items for you today. They are both 1895 Fall River Road. One is a zoning map amendment, and the other one is a development plan. The applicant, Nathan Kinley of Kinley Built LLC, requests consideration of a proposed zoning map amendment for or rezoning of the subject property from CO commercial outlying to A accommodations. The 2.29 acre property is located at 1895 Fall River Road, about 800 feet north of where Homestead Lane and Castle Mountain Road intersect Fall River Road. The subject property is zoned CO. It contains an office building that was constructed in 1975. The most recent use was a former location of the field office for Rocky Mountain Conservancy. I believe it was purchased by the applicant in 2022. The site is steep with an average slope of 31%. It's also a high-use area for bighorn sheep. This is shown on the 1996 Estes Valley Comp Plan wildlife map. Site design for the proposed development shall mitigate or offset any potential adverse impacts to wildlife habitat to the maximum extent practical. Here's a wildlife map. The green hatched area there, that's the bighorn sheep habitat. And then I have the subject property pointed out on that map. The northern half of the property is identified as having steep slopes on the Estes Valley Geologic Hazard Areas map. However, no development is proposed in that area. A significant amount of the property is located in the high tree wildfire hazard area. New construction is required to comply with the wildfire hazard mitigation measures that's found in the Estes Park Municipal Code and also the Building Code. The property is currently zoned CO commercial outlying. It is surrounded on 3 sides by unincorporated Larimer County. The parcel, though, is in town limits, so it is subject to town regulations. The neighboring area consists of a mixture of residential zoning and accommodations, mostly resort cabins. This is a future land use map from the 2022 comp plan. It shows the property as mixed use centers and corridors. That's the reddish color there. Here's a photo of the existing property facing north with Castle Mountain in the background. So table 4-4 in the Estes Park Development Code shows the permitted accommodation uses in the non-residential zoning districts. The applicant proposes a hotel which is not permitted in the CEO district. As a result, the applicant has submitted an application to rezone the property to A accommodations. The applicant requests the Estes Park Planning Commission review the proposed 1895 Fall River Road zoning map amendment application to rezone a 2.29 acre parcel from CO to A. Development project includes the demolition of the existing office structure and the construction of a 3-story hotel building. The hotel will consist of 26 accommodation units and 2 staff housing units. Vehicular access is provided from Fall River Road. The existing access to property will be realigned with the property to the south. This is a request from CDOT. Public Works finds the submitted traffic impact study acceptable and states that no new deceleration lanes are warranted. Here's a conceptual site plan of the proposed development. Here's the conceptual elevation. This shows the front of the proposed hotel looking north. The proposed rezoning would allow the applicant to move forward with development of the 2.29 acre property into a medium-sized hotel. The applicant has submitted an application for a development plan for concurrent review with this zoning map amendment application, and we'll discuss that in greater detail during my next presentation. The Estes Park Planning Commission is the decision-making body for development plans. Approval of the development plan is contingent on town board approval of the rezone. When staff reviews an application for a zoning map amendment, we focus on these 3 criteria as directed from the Estes Park Development Code. These are, number 1, the amendment is necessary to address changes in conditions in the areas affected. Number 2, the development plan, which the proposed amendment to this code will allow, is compatible and consistent with the policies and intent of the comprehensive plan and with existing growth and development patterns in the Estes Valley. And number 3, the town, county, or other relevant service providers shall have the ability to provide adequate services and facilities that might be required if the application were approved. Over the next few slides, I'll go over the review criteria in greater detail. So number 1, changes in conditions in the areas affected. The adoption of the 2022 comp plan changed the future land use designation of the subject property from commercial to mixed-use centers and corridors. The change of conditions is the addition of accommodations as an appropriate future land use. Prior to 2022, the property was the Field Institute for the Rocky Mountain Conservancy. As that use has ceased, the subject property, which is zoned CO, is now an outlier in the area. Rezoning to A is an appropriate action to remain compatible with the land uses of the surrounding area. Rezoning would allow for future development that is more appropriate with the existing character of the area and is also aligned with the 2022 comp plan and the future land use map. Number 2, the proposed development plan is compatible and consistent with the policies and intent of the comp plan. The future land use map within the comp plan categorizes the subject property as mixed-use centers and corridors. Here's an excerpt from the comp plan. This is on page 72. The comp plan's recommendations for appropriate land uses include medium high-density accommodations, such as hotels, motels, short-term rental attached units. The 2022 comp plan has 9 guiding principles for the Estes Valley. A relevant principle includes balanced and managed growth that enhances quality of life, preserves local character, conserves natural resources and wildlife habitat. There are several goals and policies from the comp plan that are relevant to the proposed development. I will summarize 5 of them over the next few slides. Goal NE, I believe the NE stands for natural environment. So NE1, maintain Estes Valley's scenic character and view sheds into and within the Valley and Rocky Mountain National Park. Policy NE1.2 states the town and county ensure that new development minimizes the impacts to visual quality within the valley, including view sheds of mountains and protection of dark skies. The scenic character will be protected by adhering to required landscaping requirements and dark sky lighting standards, and impact on view sheds will be minimized by adhering to maximum building height. Goal NE3, protect wildlife and enhance biodiversity and ecosystems. Policy NE3.1 states that the town should protect existing native wildlife habitat and vegetation communities by minimizing disturbance outside the building envelope and limiting fragmentation except as required for wildlife protection. Impacts to wildlife habitat will be limited by fencing restrictions, requirement for native landscaping, and a minimized use of exterior lighting. Goal NE4, recognize that wildfire is a growing risk to the community and proactively work to protect the lives, property, and resiliency of the valley. Policy NE41 states the town and county shall maintain building code standards to require fire-hardened and resistant materials in new development and substantial improvements. New construction will be required to comply with the wildfire hazard mitigation measures pursuant to the Town of Estes Park Building Code local amendments. BE2, that's built environment, promote protection of the environment by ensuring that development is in harmony with its setting and provides equal and meaningful opportunity to participate in the decision-making process to achieve a healthy environment. Policy BE21, the town and county require that development preserve water quality, ecological systems, and the natural features throughout sensitive site design and minimal disturbance. The site design for the proposed development plan is aligned with the town's recommended action to limit areas of disturbance for new development in order to protect existing native vegetations. Additionally, the limits of disturbance for the proposed development will avoid the steep slope areas of the lot and not impact ridge lines and view sheds. Goal E1, maintain a balance between the needs of local residents, visitors, and protecting the natural environment. Policy E12, the town supports environmentally responsible economic development, business practices, and ecotourism, which relies on maintaining a high-quality physical setting and minimal impact on the environment. The proposed development of a mid-sized hotel will contribute to the local economy while maintaining a high-quality physical setting. Efforts to minimize environmental impacts have been integrated into the design. The proposed development is compatible and consistent with existing growth and development patterns in the Estes Valley, specifically the characteristics of the Western Fall River corridor and the gateway into Rocky Mountain National Park. The third criteria, the town, county, or other relevant service providers shall have the ability to provide adequate services and facilities. Service and utility providers have reviewed the rezoning application and indicated they are able to provide adequate services to the site. Adequate fire emergency access has been provided with the site layout. The proposed driveway is 26 feet wide. That was requested by the Estes Valley Fire Protection District. Public noticing requirements were met per section 3.15 of the code. We did receive one public comment for the rezone and development plan application earlier this morning. Copy of it should be in front of you on the dais. A neighborhood and community meeting regarding the rezoning and development plan was held on site back in April. However, there were no attendees. Here are the staff findings. The Planning Commission is the recommending body for the zoning map amendment. The Board of Trustees is the decision-making body. The application complies with Estes Park Development Code, Section 3.3D, Standards for Review. The request has been submitted to all applicable reviewing agency staff for consideration and comment. And adequate public-private facilities are currently available to serve the subject property. Staff recommends Planning Commission forward to Town Board a recommendation of approval of the proposed zoning map amendment, and here are some sample motions. Please let me know if there's any questions I can answer. The applicant and the applicant's consultants are here as well.
Thank you. Open for board questions and staff and comments. Okay, I do have a few. Getting back to my original question, the area in question here is surrounded by Larimer County unincorporated space, I believe. Is this particular 2.29 acre plot a part of the city of Estes Park via annexation, or why are we dealing with this instead of the Estes Valley Planning Commission? Just curious.
Chair Cooper, it is part of the town limits. I'm not sure when it was annexed with town. I don't believe it was any time recently. I believe it was in the town for quite a while. Town Attorney Kramer might have some information on that. It definitely wasn't a recent annexation that I'm aware of.
Okay, so it is, okay. It's appropriately here then.
That's correct.
Okay. I have a question about habitat corridors. So this is in a habitat corridor for bighorn sheep. What obligations are there for redevelopment or redevelopment of this space to protect the habitat migration or the habitat in the area?
Commissioner Cooper, I don't have all that information in front of me. So there is a list of mitigation methods. It includes fencing, it includes natural landscaping, it also includes dark sky compliant lighting. I do want to point out as well that this parcel is already developed, so the proposed development shouldn't impact much more, if any, from the existing development. The majority of the property is going to remain undeveloped. It's in the high slope area.
Since we're also in a wildfire mitigation area, is there any mitigation efforts that needed to be done to this area prior to development of this as an accommodation unit?
So for this one, this is more part of the development plan. So there is a landscape plan that's part of that, and it was referred out. We didn't receive any comments or concerns from fire as far as removing any existing landscaping. New construction, though, since it is in a fire hazard area, let me flip back to that map. It will be required to comply with wildfire hazard mitigation measures. So we have that in the municipal code, but we also have it in the building code. So there are local amendments that were adopted and that requires certain type of materials and stuff of that nature.
Okay, so mostly it would be materials used to build the property instead of basically doing any mitigation efforts around it as far as like tree limbing or trimming or...
That's correct. With the landscaping plan, again, we'll get into this more in the development plan application, but I believe only 2 trees were removed and they'll be relocated elsewhere on the property, but there weren't any concerns that we received from fire as far as needing to thin out any of those trees.
Very good. Anybody else have any comments or questions at this time from the commissioners?
All right, so it looks like the public interest is low. You had an on-site meeting, a development plan held on April 24th, and there were no one who was in attendance.
That's correct.
Okay, interesting.
Any other comments? At this point in time, does the applicant have any comment that they would like to make? Okay, seeing none. Public comment. Do we have any public members that would like to make any comments? And do we, by the way, have anybody online? Okay. All right. Hearing none. I guess I would entertain a motion.
I move to forward a recommendation of the approval to the Town Board of Trustees of the zoning map amendment application to rezone the 2.29 acre parcel from CO to A in accordance with the findings of facts outlined in the staff report.
Second.
Okay. Any further comment, clarification?
Yeah, go ahead. My question was, you said that there's an office building there now, is that correct? Built in
correct.
75? And it was built in 75. I'm just curious what the size of that existing office is, how many people are coming and going to that office? Do we have any idea of what that looked like?
Yeah, I don't have the historic information on that. The applicant might have some information there. So a traffic impact study was submitted for the proposed development. So that with that information, I don't believe Public Works had any requirements for that, neither did CDOT, if that was the concern about the traffic.
Well, I'm just trying to get an idea. I mean, it's in a wildfire area. There's a lot of animals in the space. We're changing it from, CO, or the request is going from CO to accommodations. There was nobody in attendance at the meeting. I'm just trying to get an idea on, where it is right now and where it's trying to go to. So my next question, and this kind of has to do with whether or not we rezone this thing, is, what's the square footage of like the impermeable surface of the building and the parking lot now compared to what it's going to? I know it's going to like 10,000 square feet, but, how much is built right now and how much are we building out going to this new zoning code?
Commissioner Poston, that will be addressed a little bit more in the development plan. I believe the building is around 9,000 square feet. I'm not sure with the change of the parking lot, how much that is. I do know the limits of disturbance is limited because of the steep slope. So it's the existing development is essentially where the new development will be. My assumption is the parking lot will be a little bit wider. Perhaps once we get to the development plan, the applicant can speak on that a little bit more.
I'd kind of like to get some of that information now before we approve or deny a rezoning request,
I believe it said in there that if we approve the rezoning request, then that would become null and void if the development plan wasn't approved. I believe that said that in there somewhere.
Commissioner Robbins, I believe that's flipped. So the Planning Commission's a decision maker for the development plan, but a recommending body for the rezoning. So if you all recommended approval of the rezoning, but town board ultimately denied that, then it's the development plan that would be void because it wouldn't be compatible with existing zoning.
All right, thanks for clarifying that.
Could you just go back to like the surrounding zoning map real quick for me, please? So is that oriented to the north? Like if I'm looking straight up, it's north?
That's correct.
So everything to the north is Larimer County?
That's correct. It's Castle Mountain, I believe, is Castle Rock Mountain, something like that. Yeah, so it's all around there is very steep terrain and undeveloped.
What's the property to the southeast? That's Larimer County, do we know?
One moment, I think I have that on here. It is, it's in the town. It is, as you can see, it's kind of to the west, that south area is E Estate, but to the east, it's A Accommodations. It is Resort Cabins. I don't remember the name of that one.
Okay, so there's cabins there, then we got some E1 to the south. What is the purple?
I'm sorry, what was that
What is
question?
that purple color?
The purple is accommodations.
Okay, so there are accommodations. Maybe I need a little more education on, the comp plan going to the mixed-use center corridors. But in the comprehensive plan, it talks about building heights going to 1 to 5 stories. Is that correct?
That's correct, but again, that's the comp plan, so it's a guiding document, not regulatory. The code only allows up to 30 feet.
Yeah, so CO is 30 and he's doing 29 feet 11, is that correct?
I believe that's correct. That's the proposed height. So it will be under 30. The code requires it to remain under 30.
And then that table you just had up, I'm sorry to
Oh,
be
no,
so,
it's fine. This one here?
such a pain here. The high intensity accommodations, you have that highlighted. Is there a reason that the high intensity accommodations and not the low intensity accommodations highlighted here?
Yeah, so under the low intensity accommodations, a small hotel is defined as 8 or fewer units. The applicant's proposing 26 units, so that would fall under the high intensity accommodations.
Okay. The wildlife piece, I think it's only the fencing and the retaining walls. And then some type of planning.
Could you go back to the picture that, or the actual photo that you had there first? No, the photo of the area, the photo of
Let
the,
me navigate back to that.
yeah, right,
Yeah, oh, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was trying to get the orange sign in the shot, and so you can barely see on the west side, kind of a greenish color is the building. It kind of wraps up, the drive goes at an angle there, and that's up on the slope.
Is the driveway in right by that yellow sign?
Yes.
So that
However,
so the building is on the very far end of that 2.29 acre property parcel?
That's correct. It's basically in the same area as the current development. One of the changes is that access drive is going to be shifted over very little. CDOT wanted it to align with the property to the south, so it's only a matter of a few feet over.
Okay, so could you put back on there now the schematic diagram of what the property is gonna look like? Yeah, right there, okay. So this is gonna take up a lot more space than that current building that's there. Is that an accurate statement?
I would agree with that. To the east, it is more developed.
I guess my concern would be when we get to the development part of it, is some issues with runoff and water, and I'm maybe guessing that's kind of where you might have been going with that too, but, okay, I guess the point here is that we're going to have a larger building. It'll be up to code as far as wildfire mitigation standards, as far as the building materials that are being used, which is a good thing. But it is going to encompass more space. Probably not going to be that terribly different from the other accommodation zonings very close by, I'm guessing. And there's going to be a bunch of trees and shrubs that are going to be placed in there specifically between the building and the road, I believe, going forward. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the existing landscaping satisfies the requirement as far as quantities. However, the code does require buffering around arterial roads. So that's what you see in the front there. So the additional trees and shrubs are just added in the front area.
Yeah, I don't want to get into like the second action item, but you mentioned a couple things from the comp plan and, view sheds, we're just going to take your word for it that it's not going to impact, Castle Mountain behind the new development. But I don't think we did anything to touch on any 3.1 with the wildlife, nor really the BE2, number 2, in harmony with the setting of surrounding. We touched on the economic development. Of course, that's going to be good, but those two pieces, I don't know how we just broad brushed on them. Is there any more context to what we're trying to do with protect wildlife, enhance biodiversity and ecosystems with this project?
So looking at the comp plan, I have the goals and the policy stated here, but we don't have clear steps outlined on how to meet those requirements. So I look into the code to see what can we require with the current Estes Park Development Code and match that to this. And that's where I put in requirements for fencing, requirements for native landscaping, and minimize use of exterior lighting. So for wildlife in particular, I believe that's in Chapter 7 where we have those requirements listed.
Again, point of clarification, requirement for fencing, to not have fencing? Or, I mean, again, I think you're getting to the point where we have animals here that are used to migrating around, and I've seen them there frequently in that area. You don't want to do anything to avoid them getting into any trouble. So when you talk about fencing as an example, is that just the not having fencing there to prevent them from being able to migrate like they normally naturally would?
So just to clarify, that's more of a general requirement for wildlife mitigation. The applicant isn't proposing any fencing though, so it shouldn't be applicable to this. However, further down the road, if the development was to change and the applicant was to, submit plans that do show some fencing, that would be looked at to make sure that it does meet the requirements. But at this time, no fencing is being proposed.
I mean, that's just part of the development code, right? So, but I'm still to the point, we're moving really fast here, so I appreciate you guys doing that. But, a couple things aren't there for me. I mean, the change in condition, that's the biggest one that we've been talking about. What's the change in condition? The need for more, accommodations, okay, if that's what was stated, that'd be different than what we're seeing these days. But then, going into the comp plan, I'd like to see more, ideas around how you're gonna protect the wildlife if you're gonna build this bigger building, right? I'm gonna guess that the existing footprint may be 5,000 feet and we're going to 20,000 feet with the parking and whatnot, but, that's going from a little to a lot. So I'm just really not there right now, and I'm just speaking out loud for y'all.
Well, I drove by the property and you're about right, about maybe 5,000 square foot. It looks like a large house more than an office, but it's an office building. But they already have a lot of the driveway in there, and you can see that the driveway is contained. It's already there. So there's been, animals probably have seen it since '75, have seen the driveway and the building. So that should be taken into consideration.
And there's also plenty of space around on, like on either side of the, of this proposed development where, animals can get by. And, the truth of the matter is in the last 100 years, and, my opinion from what I've seen, I've lived here for 25 years, the animals figure it out.
Also, across the street, basically, 1900 is accommodations. So you've got kind of open space and accommodations right across the street.
Comments? Any other comments?
There's a question for Attorney Kramer. So, Attorney Kramer, would it be appropriate for, a package like this coming to the commission, planning commission, to do a site visit prior to make an action item on this, or no?
Commissioner Pawson, it's not common. It's something that can be done if the commission wants to do it. I would turn to my colleagues in community development in terms of setting that up. It would have to be noticed. It would have to be obviously with the consent of the landowner. But that is the kind of thing that can happen.
Okay, thank you.
So my practice is to drive by it. So I drove by it today to kind of get a look at it, so it's fresh on my mind. So I wouldn't need to do that.
I did the same yesterday. I wouldn't need to do it either.
Okay, any other comment? Commissioner Pawson, anything else?
No, it's more of an overall comment because of our last meeting. I think that more context to some of these areas where we're trying to evaluate whether a rezoning request should be considered and approved would be more context with the change in condition. Give us what you're trying to do with it. I mean, that's what I want to hear. I mean, and then, touching on some of these things with the comprehensive plan on where we're trying to go and dial that in, going from the CO to now accommodations using the mixed use centers and corridors. What's the pros and the cons? I think that, I don't want to hinder a landowner's ability to do anything that they want to do with their property. That's their fundamental right. But I think that more context around, some of these questions we've been bringing up over the course of the past few months, and with more context around it, would be helpful. You know, I just don't think, we touched on the change in conditions. We just said there's a change in condition. What's the change in condition for this rezoning request? Was there any?
Pretty clear in the packet they gave us. I could be wrong about that, but I interpreted it that way.
It was the comp plan.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, the comp plan was not a short process. That was like a 2-year or maybe longer process where a lot of people put a lot of input. I went to 3 meetings, and one of them at the high school that was packed. So it, you know, and everything in the comp plan isn't things that maybe all of us like, but that is a guide, something we can use. And they established this as a mixed use. You know, after looking at all the different options, they said this could be mixed use. So that's, I think we're honoring all the work that these people, public put into it, and the staff and put into it. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I could add on to this, and Commissioner Paulson, thank you for the feedback. I believe staff, in my opinion, does a very good job with putting together a staff report, though we're always looking to improve. If the commission had additional direction or things that would help you make a decision, we would like to hear that. So I appreciate the feedback to us, because then we can add what you're looking for to the staff reports. And just regarding the change of conditions, we talked about that last month, and I kind of provided the staff perspective of what a change of condition is. And to a planner, to your community development department, the comprehensive plan, other master plans in town, whether that's open space, transportation, utilities, those are very important to us. Those are our guiding documents. So if one of those, especially the comp plan, developed, you know, with a lot of public comment, as Commissioner Mulhern just said, that is our guiding document. So if we've adopted a new plan and that plan has different guidance for an area, then we're going to look at that as a change of condition. How can we best further that plan? And if that is a rezoning, then we will look at that, and if it's supportable, then we will support that. So that, for us as planners, those master plans, those comprehensive plans, we look at those very significantly. I know others may take a different approach, maybe a more narrow approach. It's just a physical change of condition to your next door neighbor. We talked about that last month. That is not what the staff does. We'll look at this very comprehensively, both in area, plans, and in time. So just wanted to repeat that, we discussed that last month.
so and I also feel like we're in a good position because this isn't a 18-year-old plan or a 15-year-old plan. You know, it's a 2022. I mean, we're in a good position because these decisions have just been made. So that helps me when I try to make decisions here.
I believe I'm accurate in saying this, that this property was zoned or rezoned back in, I think, 1996, based on what was occupying that property at that point in time. And that was the criteria, I think, for the way things were zoned back in 1996. What's there right now? So I believe that when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at it as a property that's no longer use for that occupation or commercial outlier or commercial use. And could it be used for commercial use again and keeping it in the same zoning? Possibly. I think it's probably been abandoned for a while. So I'm not sure anybody stepped up to do that. In my opinion, it clearly, as an A or accommodations, syncs up more closely with the other areas up and down the road. And as far as a change in condition, I think it could contribute to the local economy by having it be used as a hotel. And that would be a benefit to the town. So that's just my opinion.
No, I agree with that, but I'm sorry for kicking a down horse here, right? But it's been a lot of conversation up here for the past, 2 years that I've been up here. Um, it is favorable being a CO zoning going to accommodations. I'm not going to say that it's not, but, for the change in condition piece, the context that I'm looking for, and these guys are completely different. The trustees and the mayor is going to be completely different. But if we're talking on like economic development, maybe some context around, hey, last year we had a 95%, occupancy rate in hotels and resorts. This will add 26, new accommodations to grow our local economy, yada, yada, yada. That's kind of what I'm looking for. What's the benefit to the community, the surrounding landowners, to rezone something like this? And because I'm not going to go into the next action item, but there's a lot of things on there that are kind of going along with this rezoning application that we're asking to change. We're asking for variances, but what's the benefit to Estes Park? I think that some of that context, maybe there's some legality around it. I don't want to add that, but I think it would be helpful because all of us are just working class people and trying to make the best decision for Estes Park.
Well, in my opinion, the developer makes that risk. In other words, they see what they can do, and then they decide what's the best use of that land and the resources I have. So they're the ones that are at risk. I mean, we've already identified through the comprehensive plan that potentially this is a mixed-use area. There's other combinations nearby, but they're the ones that are taking the risk. And so I don't make a decision for them. They made that decision by putting the plan forward.
Okay, any other comment? Appreciate your comments. I so noted. Do we have a motion and a second on the floor?
Well, I've already got a motion.
We have a motion and a second on the floor, that's what I said, yes, okay. So it's time to vote. Okay, the motion passes. All right, second on our agenda is the development plan for 1895 Fall River Road. Planner Washam, you're on deck.
One moment, please, while I get this set up. Oops. Okay, so moving on to the development plan. This is an application for proposed 3-story, 26-unit hotel. I'm going to breeze through some of this since it's the same exact information, but here's a vicinity map again. It's zone CO. The applicant, of course, is requesting a rezone to A accommodations. This is the same as well. I'll skip through this unless you want me to hover over the slide for a minute. I do want to show you the hazard maps again. To clarify, no development is proposed within the steep slopes area of this map. But again, since the development is proposed in the high tree wildfire hazard area, new construction is required to comply with the wildfire hazard mitigation measures in the Estes Park Municipal Code. That's found in 14-12-060. Here's a photo again of the existing property. The applicant proposes a development project that includes the demolition of the existing office structure and the construction of a new 3-story hotel building. The hotel will consist of 26 accommodation units and 2 staff housing units. There will be a meeting room, spa, lobby, and other customer support spaces. The plans show a mechanical area located in the basement. The exterior building materials will be traditional to the area, consisting of stone and wood-look fiber cement siding. Roofing will be standing seam metal and flat roofs concealed by parapets. All exterior lighting will be shielded and deflected downward in compliance with Section 7.9 exterior lighting. The area of disturbance, it's approximately 1.5 acres, so a little bit more than half of the property, is limited to the southern area, avoiding the steep slope to the north. Several retaining walls will be incorporated into the design of the hotel. Existing access to the site is from Fall River Road or Highway 34 and will be realigned with the access drive at the parcel to the south of the road. This is a request by CDOT. Here's the proposed site plan for the development. Again, this is the same one I showed you in the rezone presentation. Here's proposed floor plans showing the ground floor and the second floor. The bold, kind of wavy black lines in the back, those are the proposed terraced retaining walls. Here's the proposed elevation. The applicant has submitted an application for a zoning map amendment for concurrent review. The Planning Commission is the decision-making body for the development plan, and again, approval of the development plan is contingent on town board approval of the zoning map amendment from CO to A. Applications for development plan shall comply with section 3.8D standards for review. All development plans that are subject to Planning Commission review shall be reviewed by the Planning Commission for compliance with the relevant standards and criteria set forth below and with other applicable provisions of this code. Over the next few slides, I will summarize the relevant standards for review for the development plan. The applicant proposes a new 3-story hotel. It's about 9,400 square feet with 26 accommodation units and 2 staff housing units. Again, with a mechanical area located in the basement. The building will conform to all applicable dimensional standards for the A zoning district. This includes the setbacks, maximum height, and maximum lot coverage requirements. The proposal for a total of 26 accommodation units complies with the maximum allowable density permitted, including the reductions for the steep slopes. Grading and site disturbance standards. The site design is complementary to the slope topography. The terrace and landscaped rock retaining walls are proposed around the west, north, and east sides of the building. The final wall design will be provided with construction plans, and it will comply with section 7.2 B6. The areas of the lot that are over the 30% slope are not to be disturbed for development. There are a significant number of mature trees existing on the site, the majority of which will remain. However, additional trees and shrubs are required for buffering along the district and the street frontage in the parking lot. So a total of 35 trees and 105 shrubs are required. 35 trees and 168 shrubs will be provided. 2 of the trees and a few smaller shrubs that are going to be removed, they'll be relocated to the new drive area. Vehicular access is provided from Fall River Road. CDOT's requiring the existing access drive to be realigned. Permits are required for the closure of the existing access and for the new access. No new public trail is required. A 10-foot wide shared use path, the Fall River Trail, was recently constructed by the town along the south side of the Fall River Road. A crosswalk is not required. Consensus by public works staff is not favorable for a crosswalk and warning signage due to the road being curved around that section. There are also no crosswalks on Fall River Road at this time. Wildlife habitat protection. The site is located in high-use area for bighorn sheep. Site design for the proposed development shall mitigate or offset any potential adverse impacts to wildlife habitat to the maximum extent practical. Impacts to wildlife habitat will be limited by fencing, native landscaping, and minimized use of exterior lighting. "38 total off-street parking spaces are required. The calculations are shown there. Adequate fire and emergency access has been provided with the site layout. Estes Valley Fire Protection District requested a 26-foot wide driveway, and that's what the applicant is proposing. Stormwater detention is not required for the development. The runoff from the site will be treated by a water quality grass buffer before being discharged into the culvert in Highway 34. The applicant has submitted a preliminary drainage report with the development plan. This was part of the packet that you all received. And lastly, the 2 proposed employee housing units are an accessory use that's permitted in a zoning district. However, additional conditions do apply. Employee housing shall be subject to the following development and operational standards. The dwelling units used for employee housing I'm repeating something. The unit shall not exceed 800 square feet. Of course, they can't be rented for less than 30 days, so no short-term rentals. A deed restriction is required. They shall be deed restricted for at least 20 years. Again, the deed restriction will prohibit the use for the units as short-term rentals. The mechanism used to restrict the units shall be approved by the town attorney. The deed restriction will need to be executed before final approval of the development plan. Moving on to the minor modifications. The applicant has requested approval of 2 minor modifications in accordance with Estes Park Development Code, Section 3.7. The first one is off-street parking. The code requires 38 parking spaces. A minor modification is requested to reduce that requirement to 34 spaces. This is due to the steep grades across the site and the required landscape buffer along the frontage, as well as the significant space constraints that exist on the site due to the topography. The second request is for the landscaping. The code requires a 25-foot buffer, landscape buffer on an arterial road, which of course Fall River Road is an arterial, so it is applicable. The minor modification to allow an area of the parking lot to encroach into the landscape buffer by 6.14 feet is requested. Again, there's significant space constraints on the site due to the steep grades and the required off-street parking spaces. However, the quantity of trees and shrubs will not be affected by this request. The code states that the Planning Commission may grant a minor modification if such modification advances the goals and purposes of this code and either results in less visual impact or more effective environmental or open space preservation, or relieves practical difficulties in developing a site. The request will result in less visual impacts and more effective environmental preservation. Approval of the request will minimize clearing of mature trees and excavating and grading on steep slopes. Staff finds that the minor modification request relieve practical difficulty. This is pursuant to Section 3.6C of the code. Again, public noticing requirements were met. That's per Section 3.15 of the code. And as I mentioned earlier, we did receive that one public comment, and it was for both the rezone and the development plan. Here are the staff findings. Planning Commission is the decision-making body for the development plan. Planning Commission has authority to approve the subject minor modification request. The request has been submitted to all applicable reviewing agency staff for consideration and comment. There are no outstanding issues. The development plan application complies with applicable standards set forth in the code. And then again, approval of the development plan shall be contingent on town board approval of the rezoning map amendment to rezone the property from CO to A. Staff recommends approval of the 1895 Fall River Road Development Plan and minor modification request, subject to the following conditions. Approval of the development plan shall be contingent on town board approval of the zoning map amendment. CDOT state highway access permits, utility permit, and town right-of-way permit shall all be issued prior to beginning any work in the right-of-way and prior to issuance of a building permit. Construction plan shall be approved prior to issuance of the first building permit. And then lastly, a deed restriction for the employee housing units shall be executed before final approval of the development plan.
And Chair Cooper and Kara, sorry to interrupt. I just want to clarify on number 4 there, that deed restriction draft, that does come from the town. We have a template for that. There might be some relatively minor updates to it, just to things have come up over the years and we would insert those, but for the most part, that's a standard document at this point. So that would be ours, that would come forward. The code says that it needs my approval, which puts me in a slightly uncomfortable position because I'm usually in the position of advising, not approving things as to substance. But I'll be working with my clients and town staff through that process too, if there are any issues that come up.
Is the deed restriction just on the units where employees are?
Correct. It's just
So,
those housing
so the
units.
26 hotel units aren't deed restricted in any way?
Correct.
and welcome to the club. I thought we were just supposed to be passing stuff out. I didn't think we were going to be making decisions either, so surprise, surprise.
Okay, here are some sample motions. Again, I'm here to answer any questions, and the applicant and his consultants are here as well.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your presentation. Open for commissioner comment and question.
Hey, I have a question. It said parking for employees, 8. I guess my question is there any public transportation that goes close to that site or to that site, or could there be public transportation that could go to that site?
Commissioner Mulhern, I'm not entirely sure, but I believe seasonally the town shuttle goes there, the gold route. Okay.
Stops about probably 100 yards to the west of the site.
So an employee could just take the shuttle in the busy season and walk that 100 yards.
Yeah.
Some people run that in football.
I have a question about the reduction in the number of parking stalls. The recommendation based on code, I think was 38, and we're going to be down to 34. Is there any concern that you have, or I'll, ask the same question if the applicants are willing to come up and talk about it? Any concern about that reduction in parking?
Commissioner, or Chair Cooper, I don't see any concern with it. The calculations were based on, of course, maximum occupancy. So I go off of what the developer recommended, based on, how they're going to run their business, if that is sufficient for their parking. So technically that minor modification is less than 10%, so staff does have the ability to waive that. However, since this is presented to you all as a development plan, I thought it'd be more appropriate to have you all just make that decision on that minor modification.
You had provided extensive documentation on the traffic study, most of which I didn't really completely understand, but the bottom line was that it didn't appear that that was going to be a disruption to the area and the neighborhood. Is that correct?
That's correct. Of course, as a planner, a lot of that's over my head as well. It was referred out to Public Works staff, and they did review that, and there were no issues or concerns.
Second question about the water runoff and the drainage studies. Again, that's something that I'm almost always concerned about. In our development area, every time a new building is built, we've got roofs, we've got sidewalks and runways and driveways, and water has a tendency to go to places where it didn't go before. You talked about having a settlement, like a settlement pond area, a grassy area. Fall River is on the other side of the road, I believe. Is that correct? And then is there any, so the water from this development is going to go into this grassy area, go through a culvert underneath the road and then into the river?
That's my understanding. So I believe that's in the preliminary drainage plan that was submitted. I'll call on Jennifer Waters, the Public Works, to explain that a little bit better than I can.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Waters, Civil Engineer in Public Works. In the case of this proposed development, they were given the practice that is general when development occurs right next to one of the rivers, and that is they are not required to detain the 100-year storm because the river is so close. And to put a detention basin on this site would be unsightly and unnecessary because the river is right there across the road. So the applicant's engineer, Galloway, they have designed a grassy swale to provide a water quality treatment, and it will detain, I believe, the 10-year storm. And the whole site design also includes a drainage system that has curb and gutter coming from where the building is, connected to that, and roof drains. All of these things will be in the construction plan. But based on the preliminary drainage report and the design across the road from the river, Public Works is satisfied with the way they're managing stormwater runoff.
Is there any chance that between a 10-year storm and a 100-year storm, that water would cascade onto the road?
Probably, but that'll be the least of our problems, and we just need the water to get to the river and away from the building. Yeah.
Hi, Commissioners, I'm Kyle Pollack with Galloway, civil engineering firm consultant for the project. And so to speak a little bit more to what Jennifer was mentioning, detention close to rivers has to do with timing. They're worried if you detain the water and release, it'll actually let water propagate on the river as well. And so timing would release flows from the site at the same time the river level would be heightened. And so it's best when it's on an individual site to let that water pass through. It gets in the river before upstream has time to propagate and raise the overall levels. So that's kind of in relation to detention on the site. In relation to, I think, questions some of yours, Commissioner Posson, about impervious area, the overall basin that drains through the site, existing and proposed condition is about 40 acres. And so the increase in imperviousness is less than 0.5%, going from a 3,300 square foot building to that 400 square foot building. So in the terms of the overall basin, very small increase, and still have that upstream of that, an elevation above that. You have a lot of impervious area, natural conditions that's going to be coming through the site. And then right next to the road, then you will have the development itself, but then there's still another buffer as well. So that's kind of buffered on each side by pervious area, that grassy swale that was mentioned. That's where we're counting on some of that infiltration to occur within that. The change from the existing condition is very negligible, actually. The same condition would happen right now if the site as is, with that swale not containing that 100-year event. That would maybe overtop based on that what is right now. We just have that increase of around 10,000 square feet on a 40-acre basin. So, which is, I think I just did some calculations, it's almost 1.7 million square feet is the kind of the difference we're looking at there, so.
Thank you. One more question. There's a nice new walking path across the street. You had mentioned that there's no need, or there was no, it was recommended not to put a crosswalk in there because of the curve in the road, I believe. I'm guessing that half the people that are going to be staying at that facility are going to want to go across the street and walk up that path. I guess I need a little bit more clarification on why that recommendation was made.
Again, I'll have Jennifer Waters of Public Works explain that one.
Hi, Commissioner Cooper, I appreciate that you, probably all of you, recognize that. When the applicant first came forward with this plan, Public Works, the recommendation was, we want to see a crosswalk there. So as recently as a week ago, the plan did show a crosswalk there. However, we, in coordination with CDOT, it was understood that the level of study, a pedestrian study specifically as part of a traffic impact analysis, would be required. And there would be no guarantee that CDOT would approve a public crosswalk there, even if the applicant undertook the expense of this pedestrian study. Furthermore, there are no crosswalks across Fall River Road or across Highway 34, except at the major intersection of 34 and 36. It is acknowledged that the guests at this hotel are gonna go down to the driveway, and they're gonna look either side. There's a very large radius curve there, and they're going to safely cross the road to the town's multi-use trail right across the street. And that's the way it's going to be.
Well, I think that brings up a good point. I mean, we're going to be going through the, development code rewrite. The pedestrian piece is a big part of Estes Park, and you got 60 people that are going to want to walk across the street. I know it's CDOT, but I mean, we need to push them to make accommodations for the people in Estes Park. And, you know, just driving here today, I stopped on 7, I think by the Holiday Inn, let a guy cross. And he was waving me past because the other side was not stopping. And I stayed stopped, but he waited till all those cars were gone. So I think, to your point, you got 60 people, you got kids. The kids are going to be staying there too. They're going to want to go on that trail. They're not going to be staying on that side of the property, especially if it's a steep slope on the backside. So, I mean, this is more of just a talking point, but I'd like to see a crosswalk there. It's foolish to go, they're just going to look both ways because CDOT doesn't want to do it.
There, there's already, I don't know how many, but I would venture to say quite a few dozen accommodation facilities along that road. And there are no crosswalks. And I've driven that road quite often, and I've, never seen anyone have a problem crossing the road, and not too many people, do it anyway. And like Jennifer said, that curve that comes up to it really is a very long radius curve. So you can see a long way around around that curve, and, provided that people are abiding the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, I don't see it as a problem. And most people do abide the speed limit on that road.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, hearing none, would the applicant like to address the Planning Commission for any reason? No, hearing none, okay. Okay, any public comment? Any public comment? Again, hearing none. I guess we're at a point where we could entertain a motion in a second.
Okay, so I move to approve the development plan and minor modifications with conditions according to findings recommended by staff.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I appreciate the presentation that you guys do. It really, it's been surprisingly, for me, it was a surprise that there was so much, it's so well done. And it takes a lot of the work out of it. You don't have to keep flipping to the comprehensive plan. And I know I mention that almost every time, but I do really appreciate having all that in front of us. So, thank you.
I want to echo that. You guys really checked all the boxes.
Ditto. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. I guess it's time for a vote. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. Next agenda item is the Development Code Update. Director Karashia, you're on the stand.
Mr. Chair, Commission members, we did kick off the Development Code update last week. That was our first meeting with the consultant, with several staff members. High-level meeting just to kick off, start discussing roles, who's doing what. So exciting day, good conversation. It was an all-day meeting. I know some of you have read the scope. The Planning Commission will have a very significant role through the Development Code update. Right now, 8 meetings with the Commission are scoped. The plan is to use your expertise, your experience as a sounding board. As different concepts are developed, we would like to bring them to the Commission, get your thoughts, opinions, feedback. Are we going in the right direction? What would you like to see? So the consultant and staff, we would like to use your expertise in that regard. We have several meetings planned in the future over the next 18 months that we would like to bring different parts of the Development Code update to you. So I'm hoping you're looking forward to that. We do plan to bring this before you several times. And that's just through the development of the code update. Once we get to a point where it is more finalized, we'll have several meetings with the commission and trustees for adoption. So we'll have several rounds of that as well. So the thought is, bring it to you as a working document. Let's get your feedback. And then when we get closer, we'll bring it to you several times for adoption, public input through that final process. But even through that, the consultant right now, they're working on the public engagement plan. That was the first thing they wanted to tackle after meeting with us. So they're putting together a plan now, having looked at some of our feedback, external, internal stakeholders, who should be involved. They're going to put together a draft plan, circulate that to staff. We're going to take a look at that, see where, is this good? What are we missing? Who are we missing talking to? So that's the first step that they're putting together. We probably won't get to any kind of drafting itself, probably not till summer, late summer. So we've got a whole bunch of work to do just with the public engagement plan before that. So that's the update on the code update. Mr. Chair, Commission, I don't know if there's any questions regarding that process.
I'm happy to hear that you have a public engagement plan. I don't know, we heard at our last meeting an outcry to basically say we want to have some input on this from the public, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
The fire department gave us a meal today to give public input. Just a suggestion.
Thank you for that update. Future projects. Trustee Lancaster, I believe we have a opportunity for a joint working session next month.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to address the board just briefly. After our last meeting, and the board struggled at the end today with what is a change in condition. And if you watched it, the town board struggled with the same thing. So we're on the same page of, well, what does this mean? And depending on the interpretation, I can interpret it where you could justify rezoning anywhere in the town on any piece of property, or you can justify it by that if you take a different interpretation that no property can be rezoned because of the changing condition has to be so narrow. I think you mentioned it earlier. Is it the change in the comprehensive plan? Is it just the change in the adjacent properties? It's vague, and it's not clear to any of us. So one of the things I've suggested, and the board agreed to this, is that we have a joint meeting between the planning commission and the town board, and we talk about this. The other thing that I'm suggesting we talk about is the workforce housing definition. I think it was good intentions. I don't think it was meant to be anything, regardless of value, maybe, but it seems like if we get to some point where we're giving away workforce bonuses for $1.5 million homes, I don't think that was what we had in mind when we did this, or when the board did it at the time. So I want to talk about that definition that also is a little vague and probably needs to be tightened up a little bit. All this will be addressed in the development plan, and we know that is something we need to address, so this is a good time to talk about it. But the development plan won't be adopted for a couple of years. In the meantime, we're gonna have things like today and our last meeting that are gonna be facing us. We're gonna have to make decisions, something in the meantime. And we can't just kick all the rezonings down the road till the new development code is there. So my suggestion is we have those discussions. We see if we can come up with some kind of understanding of what these mean, even if it's temporary, or at least, if nothing else, it's direction to go into the new development code. On the bigger picture, the 30,000 foot level, and I've always thought we should do this, I'm going to propose that we do at least quarterly have a joint meeting between the two bodies. I've always been frustrated. It seems like you guys debate this and you do something and then you just kind of throw it over the wall. And we grab it and we debate it. And we may, agree with you or disagree or set it, and then we just throw it back over the wall. Well, let's take it on the wall and talk about it. I'm used to it at Larimer County, when I worked there, the county commissioners and the planning commission met monthly. And in an informal study session, just talk about not specific cases, but specific issues and some interpretations so that they actually can have some feedback rather than just throwing it back and forth. And I'd like to see us do that at least quarterly and do it on a regular basis so we can have some of these things to talk out and we're not guessing on where you're thinking and you're not guessing at what we're thinking. We're supposed to be all working for the same community and ending up with the same results. So that's what I brought forward to the town board. Town board's, the rest of the board was amenable to that. Administrator Mahalik said we could probably get something on the shoot for sometime in April to have our first joint meeting. And hopefully you guys are all amenable to that too. And we'll start the little bit better communication, particularly as we go into this working on the development code with staff moving forward.
I would really like to address and focus on this, maybe it's a state law that allows a certain percentage of people that live within a certain boundary to make your vote a supermajority.
That surprised me too.
I'd
wasn't
never
aware
heard
of
of that, and it seems like that could derail a lot of work that we did with the comprehensive plan. I've already gotten a letter in my community of a person who said they would help us with this state thing, and I want to focus on that to understand what it is, what the intention was. I mean, just something we at least discuss at our first meeting together, because we have it set up for the next meeting, right, the 31st. So I'd really like to
Sure.
have us know.
I think anything that this body would like to add to the agenda too for our first meeting together would be very appropriate.
Can we forward any suggestions to you, or who should we forward those to?
Yeah, probably to Karen would probably be the best, or to Steve. We'll get it to the right place no matter who you send it to. Because you just send it to me, we'll get it as your liaison. We'll get it to the right place and we'll talk about an agenda.
So, Kara, just to clarify, do we have that scheduled for next, in March on our normal planning commission time?
Mr. Chair, commission members, trustees, working with trustee direction, we are tentatively looking at next month. So that would be March 18th as a possible date. Working off your standard meeting, we're needing to poll all the members involved to see if that's a possible date. But that seemed to be something workable for most people just looking at it. My apologies, Commissioner Pawson. Thank you for responding. Looks like you may not make next month, but.
Spring break, baby.
So that is something we are looking at as well. Also, the suggestion was made that it be facilitated. We're also looking at that as well to have that first, I guess, meet joint session between the two bodies, have that facilitated so we can have a very good discussion.
Since I think most of us haven't participated in a working meeting like that. So that it's not a decision-making meeting, and it's open to the public. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, my understanding is to be a study session between the two bodies. Public would be invited, but it would be up to mayor and others if there would be any kind of public comment. But our hope is that it'll be a discussion between the two bodies for the reasons mentioned, as well as for direction for staff.
Appreciate you setting that up.
Sure.
And I really appreciate the trustees being willing to have that. And I fully agree that if we could get together periodically, I think that would be in all of our best interest. So thank you.
Well, hopefully that's something we can address when we get together and maybe set it up on a quarterly basis. So that'd be my recommendation. Thank you for the time.
Yep, thank you. Any other comments from anybody? Attorney Kramer? Director Caraccia? Okay. Then I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you.